This topic is one that I know is like very sensitive, so I'm wary of some of the reactions, but I think it is still worth bringing up, especially because I am seeing it from a very unique perspective that I haven't heard anyone else talk about online as of the recording of this video. I want to have a conversation about neurodivergence, about autism, and about how neurotypical people react to someone disclosing that they're autistic, and how we can just be better at accommodating neurodivergent people in this world. The goal of this video is to increase empathy. I hope you're coming in just ready to listen, ready to question some things, ready to reflect on your own attitudes and behaviors, and just ready to hear another perspective. There's room for growth for everyone, and there's nothing to be ashamed of when, we've all been wrong before, and it's okay to learn. We can just do better next time. I may not say everything perfectly, but I'm going to do my best to include the most helpful and relevant information in here. If I did miss something, feel free to comment down below, and let's just keep it very cute and respectful. If there are comments that are disrespecting other people and that are just simply unkind and unhelpful, they will be deleted, because this is a safe space for everybody. So we're going to be very respectful even if we have another opinion. It's okay to have another opinion, but you don't have to be disrespectful to other humans in the process. So let's keep it cute. If you walk away from this video understanding a group of people who you previously didn't understand, if you walk away from this video being curious and it encourages you to be kinder and to ask more questions, to be more empathetic and compassionate to a group of people who may be different than yourself, then I have done my job. There are going to be timestamps in the description box as well, because some people may find some of the themes distressing. So there will be trigger warnings and timestamps if you need to skip to another part. And just so you know, you're still gonna understand the video even if you need to skip a certain part. So feel free to use that. To anyone who is neurodivergent, especially who are on the autism spectrum, I am really, really excited to hear your thoughts in the comments. And I want you to let me know your perspective on this topic, whatever you feel comfortable to share. If there's something you feel I should know, feel free to educate me down below. Like, we can have a discussion and I'm here for it. If you're neurotypical, that's cool too. I want to hear everybody's thoughts down below. Again, just as long as it's kind and respectful. And again, I'm not going to be perfect in the way that I articulate everything. So thank you in advance for having grace for me. My goal is just to give you this information so that you can just become a more accommodating person and you can understand another perspective. So without further ado, now that the disclaimers are done, let's get into the video. Hey, what's up? Hello, and welcome to Queen Z's World. If this is your first time seeing my face, hearing my voice, welcome. Go ahead and drop a comment down below with like a little hi emoji, a wave, a heart, whatever it is. Introduce yourself in the comments. Subscribe. Notice how when I said subscribe, the button just turned all like colorful, okay? Subscribe, that's a sign. That's a sign. Go ahead and subscribe, like the video, give it a thumbs up, and just check in with us. If you are a returning viewer, hello worldlings, welcome back, welcome home to my corner of the internet. And you are also welcome to comment down below and we can greet each other in the comments. And yeah, let's just get into this topic. And why I'm qualified to talk about it. So I am Queen Z, hello, aka Zin. I graduated in 2022 with my Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, with a special focus on clinical psych. I also have been following Amanda Seales on her podcast, Small Doses, since 2019, so that will be 5 years this year. I also have had classmates, friends, crushes, just different people in my life, family members who are on the autism spectrum or who I do suspect are on the autism spectrum. So just having that real life experience also qualifies me to talk about this topic. During the years after my graduation, I worked specifically with neurodivergent and disabled adults, so I'm pretty qualified. And I'm saying this just so you know where I'm coming from and why this is a passion for me. This is a passion for me, and I want to start out by saying this. This topic is one that I know is very sensitive, so I'm wary of some of the reactions, but I think it is still worth bringing up, especially because I am seeing it from a very unique perspective that I haven't heard anyone else talk about online as of the recording of this video. Before we get into everything, I think it would be great to start off with some definitions so that we all make sure we are on the same page and you understand what I'm saying when I'm using some of these terms. Ableism is a set of beliefs or practices that devalue and discriminate against people with physical, intellectual, or psychiatric disabilities. I'm going to let you guys pause to read the slides on this next screen, but these give just different examples of what ableism can look like. Of course, this list is not exhaustive. Autism spectrum disorder. ASD is a complex neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by abnormal social behavior, language, and communication skills. The complete diagnosis is available in the DSM-5, but I'll include some helpful notes to keep in mind while watching this video. Please note, this video is not a tool for self-diagnosis or diagnosing other people. For information on how autism is diagnosed, please check the timestamps and skip to that part. ASD is characterized by cognitive deficits such as difficulty understanding people's emotions, lack of social and emotional reciprocity. For example, an autistic person may find it difficult to process body language, gestures, facial expressions, or reading the tones of other people, and may not understand what those nonverbal cues are communicating, let alone returning them. Unusual nonverbal behaviors. For example, an autistic person may have atypical facial expressions, body postures, eye-to-eye gaze, and gestures as they interact with other people. Difficulty developing and maintaining relationships. Unfortunately, someone who lacks social and emotional reciprocity and has trouble reading social cues will have difficulty making friends. It's not impossible though. Autistic people can make friends and maintain them. It just takes extra effort. Struggling with pragmatic skills, which I'll have on screen so you can pause and read that. ASD is also characterized by repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities, sometimes called special interests, hypersensitive or hyposensitive to sensory input, difficulty transitioning between activities, being inflexible to routines, and having ritualized patterns of verbal and nonverbal behavior, stereotyped movements, use of objects or speech. For example, an autistic person may repeat a movement or line up objects in front of them or repeat things they've previously heard out of context. These deficits must be consistent across multiple contexts. The symptoms must be present in the early development period, even if it only fully manifests later, and cannot be better explained by intellectual disability or global developmental delay. It's referred to as a spectrum because there are different symptoms, abilities, characteristics, levels of severity, and various combinations of these in each autistic person. As the saying goes, If you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. So, to say this again, every autistic person has a different combination of the symptoms. Just because ASD manifests differently in one person versus another, it doesn't mean one of them is faking. If each person has varying levels of abilities and deficits on the list of ASD symptoms, they both have ASD. The deficit that all autistic people have is the absence of theory of mind, which is a topic for another day, not going to get into it. And some people who you may assume are neurotypical just may be really good at masking. This is also a reminder that if someone doesn't seem autistic to you, you're likely not even in a position to diagnose anybody anyway. So there's that. Masking, as defined by National Autistic Society on their website, a strategy used by some autistic people, consciously or unconsciously, to blend in and minimize autistic traits so that they are deemed socially acceptable. Examples include using facial expressions that don't come naturally to you, but other people around you are making naturally, forcing eye contact or monitoring how much eye contact you're making, suppressing, reducing, or hiding stimming, for example, hand flapping or echolalia, or switching to stims that are less noticeable, reducing visible reactions to sensory sensitivities, for example, being sensitive to touch but not flinching when someone shakes your hand, planning in advance what you want to say to someone, which you may find difficult to adapt in the moment based on their responses, not sharing your interests because they may be perceived as inappropriate or unusual. Although there may be elements of masking that seem familiar to everyone, autistic people have emphasized that masking is different to this. Masking is making efforts to manually act in ways that come naturally to non-autistic people to meet social expectations and blend into society through exhausting effort that can lead to autistic burnout and other mental health issues. Neurodivergent, a descriptor referring to a person whose brain processes information in a way that is not typical of most individuals. This includes people with learning disabilities, autism, attention deficit disorders, anxiety disorders, obsessive compulsive disorder, and Tourette's syndrome. Neurodiversity. This definition comes from a research paper by Patrick Dwyer. Neurodiversity is a term created by Judy Singer to mirror the term biodiversity, just applying it to how the brain is wired differently in different people. Neurotypical, a descriptor referring to someone whose brain functions, behaviors, and processing are considered standard or typical. Stigma, as defined by the American Psychology Association, aka the APA. Stigma, the negative social attitude attached to a characteristic of an individual that may be regarded as a mental, physical, or social deficiency. A stigma implies social disapproval and can lead unfairly to discrimination against and exclusion of the individual. Thank you for sitting through these definitions. Let's get to the tea. This moment was a catalyst in the creation of this video. For those of you who have no idea who these people are, here is a very brief rundown of these people's careers and everything you need to know in context for this video. For more information, go ahead and Google them, check out their social media pages, and engage with the content positively. Amanda Seales is an actress, comedian, singer, producer, author, activist, and podcast host. She started out in the early 90s as a child actor on Nickelodeon, and she has just really become a multi-hyphenate over the years. Now she uses her platform to highlight the causes that mean the most to her. Now she's an activist on social media, uses her podcast platform for the same thing. She also is, like I said, a multi-hyphenate, and she's a producer of her own entire mini universe, really, that centers comedy, highlighting Black culture, uplifting voices that are marginalized, and all that good stuff. A lot of people find her really intense, but I think that she is just really passionate. She cares a lot, and there are just things in the world she really wants to change. So that is the rundown. She typically has a reputation in Hollywood for being a whistleblower, being a little bit of a troublemaker, just to put it lightly. And I'm just adding this for context, not because this is how I view her, but just because this is her reputation for context in this video. So she's not exactly popular with a lot of audiences, but personally, I think that she is a decent human being who's trying to make the world a better place, my opinion. Shannon Sharpe is a former NFL player who played for the Broncos for a lot of his career. He is in the American Football Hall of Fame. He is very decorated in his field. He's also a sports commentator and did that for a bit and quickly became a meme just because of how funny he is and how jovial he is, and he typically has a good reputation. He's known for being lighthearted. I'm not in the sports world, so I can't speak too much more of that, but just from what I can gather, he typically is a jovial guy, and now he hosts his podcast, Club Shay Shay, which just interviews a bunch of celebrities, and now, as of 2024, literally at the top of this year, Club Shay Shay has now become notorious for celebrities who are outspoken, but, a little bit controversial to just share their takes, share their perspectives. He gives them a platform. He kind of instigates and lets them do all the talking. He doesn't necessarily take a side. And then it goes viral and all chaos ensues on social media. That's a general rundown of who these people are, and let's get into the rest of the video. I watched the interview that Amanda Seales did with Shannon Sharpe on Club Shay Shay. If you have not yet seen it, watch it at your own discretion, because it was very frustrating to watch the interviewer interact with Amanda Seales. Now, I believe that a few things can be true at once. The interviewer did not go to school for journalism, as far as I know. I could be wrong, so please correct me in the comments. I believe that he was an athlete before he started his podcast. So when we jump into these celebrity podcasts where they interview people, a lot of the times these celebrities have not gone to school for journalism. If anything, they've studied their specific craft, but people want to hear their perspective, so they have a podcast. That's awesome. There's room for that too. But that also means that there's a certain skill set that is missing in how you ask questions. Just like not just anybody can jump onto the basketball court and be an NBA star. Not anybody can just hop onto the field, throw around a football, now you an NFL player. Just because you have a microphone and a podcast, that does not make you a journalistic interviewer with the skill sets necessary to responsibly and respectfully and professionally conduct an interview. So as I'm critiquing all this, I'm keeping in mind that this is not someone who knows how to conduct a journalistic interview as far as I'm concerned. And my judging is because I've seen journalistic interviews being done well, and I've seen people be unbiased, and because that's what you're supposed to do in journalism. You're supposed to be unbiased. You're supposed to give the person a platform, whether or not you agree with them, let them say what they need to say, ask the right questions that the viewers at home would want to know, so that the person being interviewed can answer those questions without getting too defensive and getting distracted and getting insulted, and now the whole interview is derailed. There's an art. Let's know that.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the girls are not doing their thing, but they're not doing it.
I don't believe that Mr. Sharpe meant ill and meant harm toward Amanda. However, how he was asking his questions was pretty insensitive, especially when you look at her own body language and her responses to the questions. So on this episode, she disclosed that she is autistic. The interviewer then proceeded to gaslight her and kind of insinuate, no, you're not autistic, not you, Amanda. Now, just because you are not considered likable doesn't mean you're autistic. These are not verbatim quotes, but I can't bear to watch it again, but this is just the vibe I got. He was very much saying, well, are you sure you're autistic? How do you know? Did you really get diagnosed? And very much so questioning her in a way that insinuated that he did not believe her and that he thought that she was lying. He did not say that verbatim, but that was just the tone of his questions. Now, if you have been following Amanda Seales and been listening to her podcast for any amount of time and even just gone back into the archives, you'll know that this is not the first time she's talked about it. The first time I remember hearing her talk about being autistic was on an episode she did where she interviewed someone, I believe from her high school, or no, from her university. I think the episode was titled The Side Effects of Being Academic. I'll include it on the screen here. But she mentioned having Asperger's. That was the first time I heard her talk about it. So for me, I understood. When Amanda Seales was on The Real, a lot of The Real fans were rude toward her, disrespectful. They're like, oh, look at her facial expressions when someone said that. Oh, like this, look at how she's not reacting. Oh, she's so blunt. And it's like, if you understand that she is on the autism spectrum, you'll understand that her facial expressions are neutral and blank. That doesn't mean that she's not listening. That doesn't mean she disagrees. And with that context in mind, as you guys are seeing this clip, I can't include the audio, but as you're watching this clip, that a lot of The Real fans, the fans of the daytime show The Real, have used as like a key argument that Amanda is not engaged with the guests. If you keep in mind the context that she is on the autism spectrum, you'll notice like she's actually making eye contact, looking at the guest. Maybe she's not reacting as dramatically as everybody else, but you can still see that she's listening. She's not interrupting anyone. She is just waiting her turn. She's observing. She does not seem angry. She does not seem to be rolling her eyes. She's not being rude. And again, knowing that someone is autistic adds a lot of context to their behaviors. We're going to get into that later in the video, though. That's just who she is. That's just how she presents. She's not going to give you the, oh, huh, like, it's not going to be that animated. That's just how she is. With her being direct in her tone, if you listen to what she's saying, she rarely ever is insulting another person. With her tone and her method of delivery being direct, she's expressing exactly what she wants to say. This is typical of a lot of people who are autistic. They say exactly what they mean. Don't read into what they're not saying, because you are not going to be able to assume what they're not saying. Take what they're saying at face value. And again, just as far as I know as a listener, she's not the type of person who wants to harm anyone or disrespect anyone. Any question she asks is with the intention of understanding. Even as she talks about unpleasant experiences, it's not to wallow in that, but it's to describe as a truth teller, as a whistleblower, to talk about something that is not being talked about so that that problem can be solved. So when you understand that, you now see her in a different way. There were times when I felt like the interviewer was just like very brash and very harsh with her. Another thing about a lot of autistic people, including Amanda, is that they're very sensitive people. They are very caring. So I think that we treat people, we need to have, this is a different video, but we need to have a conversation on how the world reacts to Black women. Because a lot of y'all think that being combative, being rude, the back and forth, the wrestling, you think that's banter, but really you're just being mean. And when a Black woman defends herself, blocking some of those comments, suddenly, oh, you're the one who's combative, you're the one who's fighting. You came at me and I'm trying to protect myself. If you had treated me like you treat anyone else, you probably wouldn't have worded it like that to me anyway, and you'd see a different side of me. I think that we need to have a conversation on why y'all feel like being rude to Black women is banter. Even in dating context, I can't tell you the amount of people who have been rude and they think that it's cute. And I'm just like, I'm not engaging with you because this is just like, this is weird energy. But yeah, Amanda Seales handled the situation as best as she could. I mean, you could still see her shutting down because if the interviewer is not listening to you, I mean, what are we here for? So she definitely, you could see her shutting down. She's talked about her reaction to the interview on her page. Later on, the interview did change its tone, and Mr. Sharp did give her the chance to tell her story without gaslighting her. And again, I don't think he was trying to disrespect her, but if you watch his other interviews, that's his way of bantering with the guests. The guest would tell their story and say something, and he'd be like, no. But the no wasn't to say, no, that didn't happen. It's to say, like, really? That happened? No, really? But if you don't understand that, or if you're autistic and you're very literal, it's easy to feel like the no, not you, that could, not you. It's easy to feel like, oh, you're saying that that didn't really happen. When maybe really the person is saying it like, really, I can't believe that. Continue. So again, I think that the interviewer himself doesn't necessarily have the skill sets to know how to communicate the questions in a way that doesn't shut a guest down. But that's okay. We live and we learn. But I also think that Amanda has gotten so much heat throughout her career that hearing somebody word something like that could definitely make her feel uncomfortable and make her shut down. I mean, I'm off Twitter for my mental health, and anyway, that's another topic, but I'm not on social media. But I have heard through the grapevine and just seeing some of the conversations on YouTube that not a lot of people actually understand what it means to be autistic, especially in the Black community, specifically because that's the community I am in, and that's a lot of the community members that I'm hearing talk about this. People are not understanding Amanda Seales. They don't understand what autism means and how it manifests. And I just really think that we could all sit down. I can share my perspective as an expert in this field, and we can all just treat each other with compassion. All right, now this is the very important question that is key to understanding this all. How is autism diagnosed? In children, it's diagnosed in collaboration with clinical psychologists, developmental psychologists, caregivers, and anyone in the child's life who would be familiar with their behavior. For example, a teacher or a nanny. The process may include diagnostic interviews, neuropsychological testing, hearing and vision screening, and genetic testing. Adults may receive a diagnosis by a licensed psychiatrist, psychologist, or neuropsychologist. This process looks different based on where you live, which licensed professionals are available to you, and of course, the resources that you personally have, because this can be expensive and is not covered by a lot of healthcare, unfortunately. As of the recording of this video, there is no standardized autism assessment for adults, which is really unfortunate and needs to change. Still, because it's diagnosed by professionals who have masters and PhDs and didn't just take an internet quiz or watch a TikTok, we can trust that the professionals will assess each person as accurately as possible. This is a question that people who are criticizing Amanda Seales are asking without asking, right? Someone wasn't diagnosed autistic as a child, but got diagnosed as an adult. How is this possible? Not every family has access to the resources necessary to diagnose a child. Other barriers, for example, stigmas about autism, may discourage families from even attempting to get a diagnosis. Sometimes a child is so good at masking that they pass as neurotypical. Other factors, like the fact that diagnoses in the DSM-5 and earlier and the tests were initially created specifically for white male children, may explain why someone is autistic yet gets overlooked in screening. More tests must be created to recognize autism in people of all ages, genders, and cultural backgrounds. In the case of Amanda Seales, she was diagnosed with autism as an adult, which she mentions in the interview on Club Shay Shay. This isn't uncommon, especially as seeing a psychologist and psychiatrist becomes more normalized in our culture. More and more people are getting diagnosed as autistic adults. There are many reasons why someone may be diagnosed later in life. Just because someone wasn't diagnosed as autistic as a child, that doesn't mean they're making it up because it's trendy or for clout or attention. I'll mention this a lot in the video, but I'm really curious to ask what kind of clout y'all think autistic people have, or what do you think someone would have to gain from lying about this diagnosis? Personally, I don't see why anyone would lie about this other than to troll, in which case they'd eventually drop the act anyway and move on. Being autistic isn't something a person grows out of or can turn on and off. It's a complex neurodevelopmental disorder, meaning it affects the way people's brains function. You literally can't make that up. Also, I would like to revisit part of the definition where I mentioned that the symptoms must be consistent across multiple contexts. In any stage of this person's life, you're going to see some manifestation of these symptoms, and they must be present in the early developmental period. So if you ask the caregiver of someone who is diagnosed autistic as an adult, if you ask their caregiver who knew them as a child, and you listed some of these symptoms, you're gonna find the common thread. It's literally not something you can make up, and these symptoms are consistent across time. It's really impossible to make this up and keep consistent with it unless someone has been planning and plotting to, pretend to be autistic since they were an infant, which, why? Why would anyone do that? I hope you get my point. I don't see why anyone would make something like this up. And this information, of course, is not just relevant to Amanda Seales, but her situation is a case study for something that actually happens a lot with adults who are diagnosed autistic later in life and what they experience when people don't believe them. So I think it's really important for us to understand this, and I really appreciate you guys paying attention to this, learning from this. It's relevant not just to Amanda Seales, but to anyone who is diagnosed autistic later on in life. Why do some people choose to disclose their diagnosis? Some people living with ASD may choose to tell people in their lives about their diagnosis just so that they understand them better. For example, with a lot of adults who are diagnosed later in life, even being diagnosed as an adult from age 18 and onward, you may just want to tell your family and friends just so that there's context. This is a new discovery that some people have about themselves, and it may just add some context and be like, hey guys, so it turns out I am on the autism spectrum, I have ASD, and this is what it means for me. And they may choose to share that just so that their family and friends just understand them better and know how to contextualize some of their reactions and just know how to engage with them. When you are interacting with people with ASD, it's not the exact same as interacting with neurotypical people. So knowing the context that someone is living with ASD is okay, now that makes sense, and now I'm not going to take that personally because I know where you're coming from. Someone with ASD may choose to tell people they're dating, and that just may be helpful, again, to contextualize some of the things that they are saying and doing. And I think it is really good for people with ASD to tell the people who are going to be close to them or who are already close to them, who they trust, because, that's your community. That's your safe space. People living with autism, they need a space where they don't have to mask all the time because it's exhausting. Any neurotypical person can agree that you just want to be able to relax around your friends. You don't want to be on all the time. And it's the same for people with ASD. So someone may choose to disclose this to anyone with the goal of being understood by the other person. That's the bottom line. So this includes even people who choose to disclose this on YouTube, social media, TikTok, celebrities, public figures, talking more about ASD. They just may choose to talk about it just so that other people who are on the autism spectrum can find the content and relate and feel less alone, build community, and also to just like raise awareness for those who don't live that experience, to be like, hey, there are people out there who are living this experience and it's different than yours, but that's okay. They're here on this planet too. So the more you learn, the better you can get along with other people. And we can just learn how to accommodate each other. People don't disclose that they are on the ASD spectrum for attention. I'm laughing because that's a ridiculous concept. How would you get attention from saying that you're autistic if you're not autistic? To say that, oh, someone's just saying they're autistic to get attention is unfair and is confusing to me because I'm not sure what kind of attention you would get. We're gonna talk about stigmas a little bit later, but just ask yourself if you've ever thought that, oh, someone's just self-diagnosing for attention. Just ask yourself, what would the benefits be of lying about a diagnosis? What are some of the stigmas that come with the diagnosis that they are disclosing? Do you think that someone would want you to mistreat them? I'm sorry, y'all. It just doesn't make sense to me because with the stigmas that come with autism, with how people are treated, with the ableism that's in this society, why would someone choose to say this for attention, say that they're autistic for attention, quote unquote, knowing that you may now treat them badly and may give into those stigmas and see them differently? It doesn't make sense to me. People don't say this for attention. If someone is lying about being on the autism spectrum and they actually are saying it for attention, honestly, that's on them and that's for them to self-reflect about. But anyone who chooses to disclose their diagnosis, I think it's safe to say that they are not lying and rather just believe them, because you lose nothing by believing someone when they disclose that they are living with autism. You lose absolutely nothing. Why some people may choose not to disclose their diagnosis. It's their business. Also see the section on stigmas. Some people may choose not to disclose their diagnosis because of the stigmas that come with the stigmas attached to autism. They may just not want to be treated differently. They may feel like people will view them differently than before. So that may be why people don't want to share. It's also a medical diagnosis. It's very personal. I mean, we don't all go around saying, hi, I have eczema. Like, we don't all just in regular conversation as neurotypical people talk about the things that are going on with our bodies. So we're not entitled to know what's going on with anyone else. It's up to them if they want to share. Now, there are some things, even with neurotypical people or neurodivergent people, that we may share. For example, if someone has a food allergy, that's a medical thing, that is a personal thing, right? But you may share that and say, hey, I'm actually allergic to onions, so that the people who may be making the food are like, okay, let me accommodate you. You're allergic to onions, I don't want you to get sick, or I don't want to harm your body, so I'll just make your plate of food without onion. I hope we're catching it here, guys. Disclosing is done for the purpose of accommodating. And it's not easy to disclose, especially if you are a people pleaser or a recovering people pleaser, because you feel like, oh, I don't want to put anyone out of their way. I know it's inconvenient. But I think it is good to disclose it if you're comfortable. As human beings, we accommodate each other. There are ways that I accommodate you. There are ways that you accommodate me. There are ways that friends accommodate each other. There are just so many symbiotic, mutually beneficial relationships that we have with even our neighbors, right? If you live in an apartment, You accommodate the downstairs neighbors by not jumping up and down 24/7, by not screaming and listening to loud music. You accommodate each other by considering, how can I make this a pleasant experience for them as well? Anytime that someone discloses that they are autistic, that's an opportunity for us to understand them better and to accommodate them and to ask, how can I better accommodate you? Even if someone chooses not to, that's their business and it's not for us to pry. Just let someone be. If you do feel like someone may be a little different and maybe not quite so neurotypical, that's another opportunity for you to ask them, hey, how can I accommodate you with this? Or for you to even just pick up on the cues if you are able to do that. Pick up on the nonverbal cues to see, okay, this family member doesn't like being late, so how can I make sure I'm on time to accommodate them when we are meeting or when we are going somewhere together? It's just part of being a good human being, learning how to accommodate other people, whether they're public figures or they are on social media. I think it's great for us to talk more about ASD. Some of the good things that come with us talking more about autism is we get that representation. We get to hear from multiple perspectives, people who may share the same identities as the public figures and people on social media. They feel seen, they feel they can relate, they have a great community of people who understand. And for people who are not autistic, we get to hear a variety of perspectives. We get to empathize with other human beings and just understand each other a little bit better. So I think it's a great thing. It's good to see the representation and the diversity of people who are living with autism. Typically in Western psychology, autism was mainly studied in white children who are male. So white little boys living in Western society. So a lot of the research was done on that small group of people, and it's not necessarily transferable or relevant to female white children or Black female children or Black male children or Asian children, Latino and Latinx populations, indigenous populations, teenagers, for adults. Like, it's not relevant particularly for everybody. So with the autism diagnosis, the limitations of what we have so far on the research are that a lot of the symptoms are specific to white, male, Western children. So some people may be diagnosed later in life. Some people may be diagnosed as teenagers, as adults. Whatever the case is, I think it's great to have representation so that we see the different faces, quote unquote, of autism. To know, okay, this is how the symptoms may manifest in this type of person. Cool, that's different, or someone may relate to that. This is how it manifests for them. There's this saying that if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. Everyone's symptoms and the manifestations of their autism are going to be different. Yes, there are some commonalities for the sake of diagnosis and understanding that this is the same thing, but it's just going to be different for everyone. So it's good to have a variety of faces, a variety of people sharing their experiences, and I love to see it. So I'm going to link below a bunch of creators who create ASD content. Some of them are living with autism. Some people are living with a family member who has autism. So I'm gonna leave their content details down below. I follow some Asian creators, I follow some Black creators, a mother with a nonverbal child, even some white male creators who are autistic, some Black male creators, and some of them create content specifically on autism, ASD, and their experiences. Others just create content based on their own special interests and their own, things that they like. So I think it's great. And this is such a side note, but I'm gonna say it's a hot take, but it's a good one. A lot of the best YouTubers, in my opinion, are autistic. The way that autistic YouTubers put together their content is so cohesive. I'm like, this is perfect. So shout out to all the creators who are creating ASD content. Shout out to all the celebrities who talk about autism, and shout out to everyone who has ever disclosed publicly that they are autistic. You guys are awesome. I learn a lot from you as a neurotypical person. I admire you guys. Keep doing your thing. I'm rooting for you. I'm here for you. You guys are the reason I'm even making this video. You inspire me so much. You guys are awesome. And you deserve better. I'm here to be part of the group of people who are neurotypical, who are going to make this world more accommodating to you. So I'm here for it. I love to see it. They're not harming anyone. They're literally just sharing their perspectives. And that's all we can hope from anyone. So let's send some love to the autistic creators down below. And feel free to comment some of your own. How to react when someone discloses their diagnosis. If someone you know or someone you don't know personally online or on social media, TV, wherever, discloses that they have autism, here's what not to say. You don't look autistic. Do you really have autism? How do you know? No, you're not. These are not helpful ways to react. I'm starting with this because this is how we see a lot of reactions to people who are autistic, who are verbal, and who may be really good at masking. A better reaction to when you hear someone disclose that they are autistic is, okay, what does that mean for you? How does it feel to be autistic? What is that experience for you? Just asking questions that show that you are actually trying to understand that individual human being's experience. This is a great and a much better response because it allows you to also learn about this person. Whether or not you believe that they're autistic, which it's weird to me to think you wouldn't believe it. But anyway, that's your choice. Whether or not you believe it, the fact that you are actually asking someone about their personal experience with autism or just their personal experience in general will show that you care about the person and you are listening to understand. So I think that you have nothing to lose from responding in that way. Another great question to ask is, how can I better accommodate you? I mean, maybe they may not have the answer, but when you hear them talk about their experience, you can connect the dots for yourself. And again, if you are not autistic, you have theory of mind. You are able to think of another person's perspective. So use that ability to be a better friend, a better partner, a better family member to this person. So with all your reactions, do it from a place of wanting to understand the person better and wanting to better accommodate this human being who matters so much to you. There's a lot of gaslighting, and I'm gonna have to put a trigger warning for this. There's a lot of gaslighting that happens where an autistic person will share that they are on the spectrum, and this person may be high functioning, which is not a term that we use anymore in psych, but pretty much it means the person may not look autistic, or you may have seen them and it's like, well, you seem to communicate well, you seem eloquent, you seem neurotypical to me, so I don't know why you're saying that. So some people may feel like, oh, well, you don't look autistic to me. You don't fit the box that I have in my head of what an autistic person looks like, so you're not autistic. One of the most annoying things that has come from this past decade, the 2020s for me, everybody and their mama thinking that they are now a mental health professional because they have read some infographics on Instagram or watched some YouTube videos or even read an article, read one. And now, or they go to therapy and now they feel like they are also a therapist and they don't need a degree. Like, no, if you don't have at least one psychology degree, you are not in a position to diagnose someone. Neither are you in a position to say someone is wrong about their own diagnosis. Because the way that some of you have not even passed intro to psych in first year university, yet you want to be telling people, no, you're not autistic. It doesn't make sense to me. You wouldn't even know because you haven't studied it. So if we go back to the section where we talked about diagnosis, how people are diagnosed. Who can diagnose? How can diagnosis happen? What's the process? Let's keep that in mind. If you are not in a position where you have studied psychology and enough to be able to legally and medically give diagnoses, you're also not in a position to gaslight people and say, no, you're not autistic. Having a diagnosis can be helpful for people who are on the autism spectrum because they live in this world feeling like an alien. A lot of autistic people, when you hear their perspectives, they feel like they can't relate to their peers. They can't relate to other children. They notice that other children treat them differently growing up. Already that's going to be a childhood trauma. On top of that, being a teenager going through that, feeling a little bit isolated, feeling misunderstood. As a young adult, even if we look at the experience of Amanda Seales as a case study, she's an adult who is in the entertainment industry and dealing with the criticisms that come with being a public figure and not knowing how to cope and people criticizing your methods of coping. You know, there's so much that goes on. Having a diagnosis of autism may help someone feel like they understand themselves. That's major. We all need to feel at home in our own bodies. We all want to feel like we can understand ourselves at the very least, even if the world misunderstands us. So in telling someone, no, you don't have autism, you don't look autistic to me, you're taking that away from that person. And that's not your place to do that. And again, if you are not a psychologist, you're not a clinical psychologist, how do you know they don't have autism? If you are not their personal psychologist, how do you know they're not autistic? Have we ever questioned that? What if we turn the tables back and question you? How do you know that they don't look autistic? There you go. Autism, again, it affects the brain. It's a way that the brain functions. You can't see the brain. So either way, you're not going to be able to tell unless someone chooses to disclose it, or if you studied autism and you studied psychology and you recognize these patterns in someone, that's the only way you'd be able to tell anyway. I just need everyone to stop thinking that they don't need to actually get a psych degree to start diagnosing everybody or telling people their diagnosis is wrong. I'm tired of it. Let's stop. There's also the stigmas. Unfortunately, in society, there are still a lot of negative stigmas and stereotypes surrounding autism. I'm not gonna get into it in this video, but I think we all know. If you're an autistic person, you know that people treat you differently after you've disclosed that you're autistic, or even if they don't yet know, we as a society are not necessarily kind to people who are neurodivergent. Like, for example, if we're in a cafe that maybe is like a smaller cafe and there's someone who's autistic in there, maybe you don't know that, but they're just talking a little bit more loudly than everybody else, a little bit above an inside voice. They're using an outside voice inside. People do stare. People do feel uncomfortable. Typically, with neurotypical people, we know that when people stare at us with a certain look, it's pretty much like social policing. You know that means that they want you to quiet down. But if you are autistic and you don't read social cues and unwritten rules, you're not gonna know why they're staring at you, so you're not gonna quiet down. Yeah, I just don't want to go into all the ways that there are negative stigmas. I do want to explain this properly. Another example is in religious communities, some people even have trouble admitting that they have a cold because for them, they don't want to speak that over themselves because it's something negative. So some communities who are religious may avoid saying the word autism or describing that someone is on the autism spectrum because they feel like in them speaking it, they are sentencing someone to something permanent, or they're saying something negative. And that's not true. Being autistic is not a negative thing. It's neutral. It's just a different way of thinking. It's a different way that the brain works. That's it. That's neither good nor bad. Now, some of the symptoms, of course, are maladaptive and are not easy to cope with for the person who is autistic or their family or their community who's trying to support them. But at the end of the day, diagnosing and saying the name of something is not what causes the problem. But anyway, so that's another stigma. Some people may feel like, oh, it's negative, I just don't want to speak that over my child. Meanwhile, there's nothing negative about that word. That word is just describing the symptoms that you're seeing. What's another stigma people have? And just in general, people tend to be afraid of what they don't understand. So because as neurotypical people, in general, we don't understand people who are neurodivergent. So their behaviors may seem a little strange to us, a little different, unusual, and we may not be sure how to react or to cope with that. And so that may be another way that the stigma shows up. People also tend to infantilize adults who are living with disabilities, which is not right. I don't agree with that. People talk down to a lot of people on the ASD spectrum, talking to them really slowly, like they're a 5-year-old. And yeah, that's part of that stigma, because in talking down, the person who's talking down to another person may believe that, oh, they don't understand me if I talk normally, so I need to talk to them like they're a child. And that's not true. A lot of autistic people are actually very, very clever, very quick, like, yeah, so there's no reason to talk down to them. They definitely understand. And if they don't understand, they'll probably ask more questions and you can answer, just like you would with anyone else. My biggest problem with not believing people when someone says they're autistic is that this gaslighting is actually bullying. It's so detrimental to the autistic person. It makes them shut down. They now don't want to tell anyone else again, because last time I told people I was autistic, I wanted them to understand me, but they just turned on me and now I'm being attacked. That's not fun. So they wouldn't want to disclose that again. Meanwhile, we've already talked about the benefits of disclosing that you are living with ASD. So let's stop bullying people. Let's stop bullying people on the spectrum. Let's stop gaslighting them. What do you have to lose by believing someone when they reveal their diagnosis? And all of this can be summed up by ableism. This is taking some maturity on my part to reveal, and some vulnerability, and I will put a trigger warning for this section. When I was a kid, I saw that there were some kids who were different. They would also maybe like be labeled as annoying by other kids, or just like a little bit too much, a little bit clingy, just any child that couldn't read social cues well and just did maybe a little bit too much. Me and my friends, I found that we would typically run away from them. And I don't think that was right at all. That was completely wrong. I didn't understand the teenager who was nonverbal, who would make loud noises in church, nor did I understand why him and his family sat at the front of the church. I bought into the idea that neurodivergent people should be hidden, because I thought, why are they sitting at the front? Why can't they sit at the back so that the rest of us can hear the message and not be disruptive? Which is buying into the idea that neurodivergent people should be hidden and should be separate from the rest of society. And I deeply regret this. I deeply regret how I treated neurodivergent people. So if any of those people are watching, if we grew up together and I ever ran away from you, or you felt you weren't included by me, or I wasn't treating you with the respect that you deserve, I'm so sorry. I am very sorry. It was wrong of me to do that, and I am really making an effort to do better. And yeah, you just deserve better. I'm really sorry about that. What changed for me is I remember being 10 years old and I was at summer camp, and there were two other little girls my age, and they were related. One of them was neurotypical, one of them was autistic. And just seeing how the neurotypical little girl treated this autistic little girl was just so beautiful. She was patient with her as she stimmed. She just included her in the conversation. Even when the autistic little girl was like speaking a little bit slightly too loud, the other girl would just still vibe with her, didn't look at her weirdly, didn't really react, just treated her like normal. And that was a game changer for me. That was the first time I ever saw another child treat a neurotypical child treat a neurodivergent child with respect. And it changed how I interacted with that neurodivergent child as well. I'm saying all this to say that I think there's going to be a benefit in neurodivergent people, whether they're verbal or nonverbal, being integrated into neurotypical society. When we see them being treated with respect, when we see that they are not harming anyone, that they are just trying to exist like everybody else, that then shows us, oh, okay, I don't need to stare when I see someone walking with a little different gait, because some people on the autism spectrum may not have the same level of balance and calibration as neurotypical people, right? Oh, I don't have to stare. I can just be like, okay, that's just how another human being walks. Or if someone is stimming, just being like, okay, well, that's how they're coping with the stimulation in the environment. That's how they're getting that energy out of their system. That's just how they are. Okay, we'll let them have their moment. And when they're ready to jump back into the conversation, we'll re-engage. Or some people may need to take a break so that they don't have a meltdown. I'm getting ahead of myself because I do want to talk about how we can better accommodate people who are neurodivergent. In my final year of university, I was in one of these classes where we were talking about ASD. And just like in hearing some of these symptoms, I started to notice some patterns even in some people, some of my loved ones who I didn't understand in the past. I wasn't diagnosing my loved ones with autism. Rather, I was humanizing the autism diagnosis by realizing that even people I love, who I know, may be autistic, and that's okay. It even helped me understand a young woman who tried to bully me. I won't go into depth, and I don't want to give too many examples because I'm not trying to fight y'all in the comments and have you try and gaslight me on my own relatives and friends who I have seen. But just to talk in general, it gave me context when I would talk to a friend and notice that she never initiates the conversation. I'm always the one initiating. It gave me context to understand that another person's bluntness was not them trying to be rude and sarcastic, but they were communicating straightforwardly because that's just the clearest way that they could communicate. And they didn't laugh at my jokes because my type of humor may not be their type of humor, and they may not understand the nuances of my jokes because their brain just thinks differently than mine. It gave me context for a relative that there may be a reason why they're not able to read the social cues and know the time and place, but to have patience with this person, to know that they're just a human being trying to connect and not to take it so personally when I hear some of the things that they have to say. And in seeing the neurotypical little girl interact with the neurodivergent little girl, it really made me realize that neurodivergent people are not so much different than the rest of us. They're not aliens. They're human beings, and the same way I would want to be treated with respect, I can treat others with respect. The same way that I can have a conversation with another neurotypical person is the same way I can have a conversation with a neurodivergent person. We all require the same key ingredients. So I encourage you, if you're serious about trying to understand the experiences of people living with autism, you can watch some videos about people sharing their firsthand experience. And again, information to channels I personally recommend and personally watch will be in the description. B, you can do your own research and read scientific articles on the topic. Google Scholar is free, so you can be more educated on this topic. And C, you can volunteer and work with people who are living with disabilities and people who are neurodivergent. That will really help you understand neurodivergent people. So here's how I react when I suspect someone around me is autistic. I listen to what they're saying without interrupting or projecting or assuming how they're going to answer. Just let someone finish their thought. I ask follow-up questions like, what do you mean by this? So I can understand what this person is communicating. I don't take it personally if they say an inappropriate comment or if they say something rude. If this is an adult, just because of the cultures I'm in, I'm not in a position to correct an adult who's older than me, just that's our culture. But if this is someone who's my peer and they say something that is rude or hurtful, if this is my peer, I may share a comment that gives another perspective. I don't police their tone. I don't take offense easily. Because remember, guys, people who are autistic, they can't read the unwritten social rules and social cues. So things like tone, saying, oh, you could have said that better, that person may not have even an inkling of how they could have said it better. It's so important when you are communicating with people who are autistic to take what they're saying at face value. What they're saying is what they mean. If you feel that there is a hidden meaning or you wonder what they meant by that, you can ask, what did you mean by that when you said this? Instead of immediately jumping to being offended and assuming that they are attacking you. Just because someone is straightforward and blunt, it doesn't mean they're rude. Like we said before, this may just be the clearest way that they can communicate. I don't talk down to people who I suspect have autism or talk to them like they're a baby or otherwise patronize them. I don't interrupt or shut them down. I ask them about things that they're interested in. I compliment them on things I admire about them, and I listen to them as they talk about their special interests. I laugh at their jokes. If there's a need that I have, I'll let them know plainly. For example, if I text a person and they don't reply at all, I would say something like, I would really appreciate if you could respond to my text as soon as possible, or if you're busy right now, to just acknowledge that you've seen it and let me know that you'll respond later. I hope you'll notice through my list that how I treat people who I suspect are autistic, if they have not disclosed that, or people who I know are autistic, is not much different than how we should all be treating everyone. If we treated everyone like this, regardless of neurodivergence, the world would actually be a much better place. This is a note to everybody living with ASD. I applaud you. I applaud everyone who is brave enough to disclose their diagnosis. Whether or not you choose to disclose your diagnosis, I applaud you and I appreciate you and I see you. You are not an alien. You are a human being. You're the same species as me. I respect you. I make space for you. And I want to understand you as an individual, because I know that just because you're living with autism, it doesn't mean you have the exact same needs as another person who's autistic. Amanda, if you're watching this, I believe you. I appreciate you telling your story, and I understand you. Thank you for sharing your gifts, your talents, and yourself with the world in the way that you do. I can see that you do make an effort to make the world a better place. And I believe that you truly are making the world a better place. I believe that you are making a difference. I don't know you personally, and I may not agree with everything you say, but I still appreciate your perspective. And even as a neurotypical person, I relate to you on so many levels. So thank you for existing exactly as you are. This is not just for Amanda, but for all the neurodivergent people on the planet. Whoever needs to hear this, The world is a better place because you're in it. You're not an alien. You're not a mistake. You've made so much effort to adjust to the world and to accommodate the neurotypical world. It's about damn time the world adjusts to accommodate you. And I want to close this with one more definition: compassion. Sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. If we all led with compassion, sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others. Let's just treat each other regardless of diagnosis with compassion. Thank you for watching my video. So, I have no idea how to title this. Okay, maybe I shouldn't say that. And sometimes my hair may be sticking up in the back and flying away, but I hope we can focus. What is autism spectrum disorder? There's a bug on my floor right now and I really don't want it to touch me. Oh my gosh. And if it goes underneath, this is gonna be squished and I hate what, you know what? I'll give it up. I can't do this. Did I squish it? Unfortunately, I think I did. Oh my gosh. I hate this! A descriptor, neurodivergent. A descriptor referring to a person whose brain processes. A descriptor referring to how a brain, And I want to close this with one more definition: compassion. Compassion. I don't have the definition ready at all. Okay. Stay subscribed for more and comment down below your thoughts. I will see you in the next one. Bye. No, I don't want to end with that.